We have a quorum. And on our agenda, we had an update on items in committee, and I wanted to go through all the different items, see where they stand, and see if there's some things that, that we can take out and see what we can move forward. One item, though, we can go ahead, and Ms. Gorton, we'll let you go ahead and start. We have some information on the private fire hydrants, and Chief Doug Ingram is going to give us an update on that. So if you would, Chief, we'll go ahead and start with that one. And they're making copies, and they should be passing them around here shortly.
I think we've got some faces that weren't here about a year and a half ago when this issue originally came up, so just give me a minute just to kind of review the history on this and provide a few definitions so everybody's clear on what we're talking about. And I am Douglas Ingram with the Fire Prevention Office of the Fire Department. Here in town, we have three different classifications of fire hydrants. There are public, private, and privately owned hydrants. Now, for each of these, the public hydrants are those we're used to seeing out on the public streets. Those are the ones that the LFUCG pays Kentucky American Water a monthly fee per hydrant. And these fees take care of basically everything required of the water company to provide us hydrants in the water, the maintenance, the testing, the flow testing, the painting, and in the end, we don't have to do anything with these hydrants other than use them when we need them. Right now, we have approximately 6,789 of these hydrants here in town we are paying for, which comes to approximately $2.3 million a year in hydrant fees going to the water company. The second classification is private fire hydrants. These are also maintained by Kentucky American, but they are located on private streets and private property, with the property owner paying the monthly fees to Kentucky American Water. And obviously, Kentucky American does all the required things to that, and we use the hydrants as we need them. Right now, there are approximately 552 of these that we know of, and to date, we really don't have any problem with these hydrants in operation. Our problem with the private ones is occasionally homeowners associations will get tired of paying the fees to Kentucky American and become delinquent, and then we get involved in the middle of the water company wanting to turn these hydrants off, and our opinion is they're required for fire protection. So that's really the only issue with these. The hydrants in question today that we've talked about in the past are the privately owned fire hydrants. These are located on private property, and it's the responsibility of the property owner to maintain these hydrants in a state of readiness for us to use. The problem with these privately owned fire hydrants in the past is they were allowed to be installed on smaller water lines, most often on a single feed onto the property. And one reason for this is because the water is metered. And being metered, they didn't want a double meter charge or triple meter charge, because meter charges in the 6 and 8 inch range and up are significant fees collected by the water company. And to date, we know of 1,149 of these. And we're still finding some of these occasionally that we were not aware were out there. Just a short history on this hydrant situation. A number of years ago, probably 15 to 18 years ago, fire suppression crews were under a directive to not use privately owned hydrants because they could not be depended upon. There was no program in place to ensure their maintenance, or even they would operate at all should we need them. But in many instances, these hydrants are the closest hydrants to some facilities, and they were put in for fire suppression efforts. An example of this, an easy one for everybody to think of, is the Marriott Griffin Gate on Newtown Pike. The building is a significant distance off of the public street where public hydrants are, and they have hydrants around their facility on large water lines. So you can't make a blanket order to not use them, because that is the closest water, and theirs are in excellent shape, and we use them as needed, as many other facilities. So with that, we began work on educating property owners on what they're responsible for. We've had a lot of cooperation, but as with any issue, there's always some property owners that aren't so willing to spend a little money and take care of the equipment. Now what brought this issue to light a couple years ago was the Shaker Drive fire. We had a significant fire at that facility, and the complex has one privately owned hydrant, which was used along with other Kentucky American hydrants during this fire. And it was determined, or became evident, that this privately owned hydrant had inadequate water flow during that fire. Part of that was that it was located on the same water line behind other hydrants. So as we were hooking up to multiple hydrants, the hydrant at the end of the line had virtually not enough water for our type of operation that we were doing. So with that fire, it just brought to the forefront the need to address these issues, work with people to identify good hydrants, bad hydrants. So since the fire, what we've been able to do is create a dedicated position of water control officer, and Captain Chuck Bowen, back here standing, is our water control officer, and his dedicated function is to oversee the maintenance, the annual maintenance, testing, painting, everything for fire hydrants. And he's doing a wonderful job at that. It's been a big task, being that we've never had anything really in place. He's worked with our computer people to develop computer tracking on an annual basis for these privately owned hydrants. He's met with a lot of facility personnel and educate them. And we're also working with Kentucky American Water to get away from allowing any more of these privately owned hydrants. We've had some success in that, but some people still persist that they want a water situation designed that way. So today, if there are any more privately owned hydrants installed, they're installed to our current minimum standards, not what was 20, 25, 30, 40 years ago. And some of those requirements are a minimum line size of 8-inch, which is concurrent with what Kentucky American requires. Depending on the size of the development, is how many water feeds we will have into that development. We try not to have any more single feeds if it's more than one hydrant. And the water flow requirements are based on the construction type, what the building's built out of, what it's used for, and the size of it. It just makes sense. A perfect example of this for a system that has worked is Hamburg Pavilion. You take that complex bordered by Man of War, I-75, Sir Barton, all the way down to the movie theaters. That whole big rectangular area is its own privately owned system, and they have 3 feeds into that. They have 10-inch lines, 12-inch lines, and to date, I not know of any problems within that complex for water flow. So it can work, but we have to hold them to today's standards on installations. Right now, we're currently in a 2-year process to have all the hydrants painted according to their water flow rates, and that's what the overhead is on the screen right now. It's kind of hard to tell, but the bottom row is actually red barrels. Okay, the top row there, anything today that has yellow barrels is maintained by Kentucky American Water. That's both the public hydrants LFUCG pays for and private hydrants on property that the property owner pays Kentucky American for. So being a yellow barrel hydrant, we know right away who's responsible for taking care of that hydrant should we have a problem with it. The second row, they're red barrel. That signifies the privately owned hydrants where the property owners are responsible for the maintenance. So if we have a problem with one of those, we know to go look up the property records and who to contact. Now, similar to both types of hydrants are the bonnet colors and the cap colors. They're red, orange, green, and blue. What that does is signify the amount of water available in that hydrant. If it's a red bonnet hydrant and red caps, it's 499 gallons a minute or less. If it's orange, it's 500 to 999. A green hydrant, which is a pretty good hydrant, 1,000 to 1,499 gallons a minute, and a blue hydrant is 1,500 plus per minute. That's an excellent hydrant. And what we're doing is identifying these all over town, and they're being painted. If you've gotten any phone calls, that's what it's about. It's been talked about on radio shows. I've been called in the office. It's just amazing how much communication has gone on about hydrants. And we've actually had a couple of homeowners didn't like their color, so they took it upon themselves to paint their hydrant in their yard their own color. So that's where we are today in that. As we move forward, and we've worked with the water company on improving the speed of the process of spotting new hydrants. Captain Bowen also does that, so hopefully we've sped up the development process in getting those where we need them. And today, more developers are learning that it's better for their development in the long run to have Kentucky American hydrants on their property they're developing instead of being responsible for their own hydrant maintenance in the future. And that just comes down to money. In the end, you either pay more up front or pay a little throughout the years. So that's where that is. So that's kind of our goal right now, is we've decreased the number of these that are being put in today, and we're getting the ones that we currently have serviced and maintained and problems fixed. That's all I brought for you. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Ms. Gorton?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Chief, Assistant Chief.
Battalion. Thanks for the promotion.
Yeah, I'll promote you right here today. I want to thank you very much. I had put this into committee right after the Shaker Drive fire because of the questions which you brought forward, the questions which came up at that time about the private hydrant. And I just wanted to thank you for the work you've done. I knew you had been working on this, and I had attended one meeting a year or so ago when this was all discussed. Tell me again, I just really had one question. The maintenance on the private hydrants, what sort of, is it a yearly follow-up you do with the owners, or what's the flow of that in terms of being sure that they're all up to date on the?
That's part of our computer tracking that Captain Bowen has developed, that they're supposed to submit to us annually, just like a fire sprinkler system that's in this building or a fire alarm system. It falls under already established standards. We've not created a requirement out there of our own.
Okay.
We have followed established standards that are already there, and we did not dream up these colors either. They also follow NFPA standard. So we've been well within the recognized national standards in doing this, and part of that is an annual reporting to us as the authority having jurisdiction that they have maintained their hydrants and done specific things that are addressed in those standards. And our computer software, Captain Bowen, it's my understanding, can print out if somebody's overdue. We'll get a printout of who's overdue, like who we've not heard from.
And then that was going to be my next question, is then do you follow up?
Yes, then Captain Bowen goes to the site and follows up with that facility on where they're at in their process.
Okay. So then you bring them into compliance through that program and through the follow-up.
It's basically no different for fire prevention to go out and go to a restaurant or bar or public assembly and find exit lights out or something else that needs to be serviced. It falls under that same routine we do for many items.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you for your work on this because it's very important. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Beer?
Thank you, Chair. A couple or three, actually. With the various scale of gallons per minute, does that impact at all the residents' insurance premiums? The fact that they're lower, for instance, than a standard or?
I do not believe we've identified any specific area that has such a significant low flow that it would, and we've just not had that issue anywhere. Now, there are a couple areas out in the county that are not served by Kentucky American. I think they're served by Nicholasville Water down in the Spears area, where there are some hydrants down in there that are basically non-functional, and we've been advised that they are not for fire department use. So basically those areas would fall under either a Class 9 or 10 insurance rating because of lack of water supply. The fire department, not only for that area, but for the whole county area, the fire department's moving toward being able to haul more water. And once we get that established and verified and our process submitted to ISO, we're hoping to get the worst rating we would have in the county would be a Class 6, which for residential properties is a pretty good rating. You get a big decrease in your insurance premium going from a 9 to a 6. I mean, that's what I have where I live, and it's not bad. So,
I guess the second question involves farms. You will see sometimes hydrants that are on roadsides, but you also know that their hydrants may be 600 or 800 yards deep past the gate of these farms that are owned, I assume, by the farm owner. And are they off the same line as the ones that are out at the road, or how does that?
That varies to the farm. Some farms have lines coming off Kentucky American that have hydrants that are sufficient, And then there are some farms that have some old hydrants that are fed off of their own private system and their own water towers. I don't know that they really apply to our protection or our needs for fire suppression, because usually they don't have enough water supply or flow capability. A lot of times they use them for irrigation in their own purposes. But if they have those hydrants and they want us to, consider them for our use, then we give them the requirements and they can have them flow tested and certified just like anybody else.
Well, it seems that barns, for instance, seem to be susceptible to fire. You see them happening all the time, and
Oh, yeah.
I was just curious about that. And I guess the third question is UK. Do they have their own system, and do they own their own system, or how does that work?
University of Kentucky's water system is fed from Kentucky American. Back when we had the administration building fire, all of the on-campus hydrants were maintained by the physical plant division of UK. To date, I think they're still doing that. Yes, they're still maintaining their own hydrants. There has been some discussion, I believe, between UK and Kentucky American on Kentucky American taking over that, but that's never been accomplished for Kentucky American to maintain all those hydrants. But UK is aware of our requirements, and you've been working with them, right, at times? Yeah, they're treated just like anybody else here in town that has fire hydrants.
But we ourselves, as far as the flow levels and things of that sort, our requirement, we're going to fight the fire, are we not?
Right,
No matter
absolutely.
what it may be. So do we have standards that they have to meet?
There are standards in place for required fire flows based on building size and whether it's a wood building or a metal stud building. But when you get into existing facilities that were built 30, 40, 50 years ago, we do not have a means in place to go back and apply today's standards to stuff that's, existing. We can't go back and make somebody dig up a 6-inch water line that today we wouldn't allow to be put in. We have no tools in place to be able to do that. So that's where this color coding comes in, to identify those areas in need if there is a serious need. And the other part of this color coding is when a fire engine pulls up, if they're faced with a major fire, they're not going to waste time on a red bonnet, red capped hydrant because it doesn't have enough water for the situation that's facing them. They will look back and see where a better colored hydrant with more flow is and operating from that. So they're not going to waste time on an insufficient hydrant. Thank goodness, because that's what we don't want. We don't want them using an insufficient hydrant if we have a big life safety hazard or a huge building that's potentially on fire.
Well, the Twin Towers, for instance, over by Commonwealth Stadium,
Right.
would be a challenge. I guess at best it would be a challenge because they're 20 some odd stories high.
Yeah, their water supply in that area is very good.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, Chief. They have at least over 1,000 gallons. We require a minimum of 1,000 gallons for structural firefighting, and University of Kentucky campus, all their hydrants are at least 1,000 gallons. Matter of fact, most of them are like around 1,500 gallons.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Ingram? Thank you so much for the information. At this point, what would you like us to do? Will we just bring this forward to the full council then next Tuesday? Is there any
As
further?
a report.
Yes. Is there?
I think that would be really a good thing, and then we could remove it from the committee, because that's really what we wanted, was the update.
Right, and I think what you've given us is a good outline, and I'm glad to see we move forward here with this, and I think we're on the right path here. Thank you.
All right.
The next issues in here, we have some traffic engineering issues, and I think Brad Frazier has a couple that he would like to talk and tell us where we're updated on here, if you would. Brad?
Yes, sir. Brad Frazier, Traffic Engineering. Going through the list, we'll go ahead and start with the first one, which is the speed limit reductions adjacent to Christ the King Church. That is a study that was requested by Councilmember Stevens. To date, data has been collected for that area, so now we're putting it in a report format. So that is an open and active item at this point.
And when do you foresee bringing that forward to us?
We will go ahead and send it directly to Councilmember Stevens, and of course, if we needed to bring it before this body, we can do that at the end of the summer or the first part of the fall.
Okay.
The next item that we were asked about was the multi-way stop condition at Armstrong, or proposal for Armstrong Mill and Crosby Drive. The information that we have in the file, there was a concern along that corridor area near River Park that also involved Crosby over there and Appian Way. From the council members' request, we went and looked at that, and we found that there was a problem more in particular at the River Park area. So what we had to do, because of the request, was to go ahead and install flashers at that location, so that the signage wasn't enough, but we had to go ahead and update and take it another step beyond to alert people of those approaches. So that should help out with some of the situation we have at Crosby. Also, in discussions with the council member, we're going to go ahead and look at the signage. There are some intersection ahead signage that's out there to alert people that Crosby Drive is coming up, but the desire is there to go ahead and see if we can't do a little bit more of an alert status for the motorists coming down Armstrong Mill. Also, on top of that, Appian Way, they're looking to do some signal improvements in that area, so I'll allow Steve Cummins with the signal section to come up and talk about that issue. And also, Mr. Chairman, he will be talking about the issue that there was a question on about the US 27 and Waveland Museum Lane signal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cummins, welcome.
It's been a long time since I've had the
It
pleasure
has.
of being in the council chamber, so I appreciate your patience and allowing me to get readjusted in front of the podium. My name is Steve Cummins. I'm traffic signal manager for the city of Lexington. The intersection of Appian Way and Armstrong Mill has been problematic throughout the years, and we are going to be making some significant changes to improve the safety and efficiency at that intersection. I'm sure Councilmember Myers is welcoming that change. We're going to be split phasing that intersection to where one side of Appian will go and then the other side of Appian will go. There is a bit of a hill or a crest in that intersection as you go across from one side to the other. That will take a lot of the school bus traffic. That'll make it a lot safer for that, as well as pedestrians in that area. We're also going to be adding a protected, permitted movement off of Armstrong Mill, where you'll have an arrow as well as a green ball to make those left turn movements off of Armstrong Mill. So there may be some additional delays with the added phases that are going to be coming, but I think the safety factor that we're going to be adding to that intersection will help out dramatically. So those changes will be coming before school year starts. So we're going to get those things implemented as soon as we can get out there. So if there's any questions as well as anything additional to Armstrong Mill, I'll be happy to entertain those.
Mr. Myers, do you want to have any?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cummins. You guys are doing a fantastic job out there, and we welcome, as you said, the changes are going to come. I have a question, though, about Crosby. Coming over that little hill, a lot of the residents say they have trouble coming out onto Armstrong Mill because the traffic just kind of appears over that hill. And I know they wanted a stop sign there, which just isn't going to work because of the hill. Do you have anything that might help us with that, too?
I think that a lot of times any type of changes, because traffic is somewhat fluid, so once we can implement some of the changes we're going to do at Appian, as well as some of the changes that Mr. Frazier is going to be doing at the River Park, we can kind of adjust accordingly and do another study. I don't like to get bogged down and tell people we're going to continue to study and not do anything. But with these changes, we can kind of gauge what has happened.
Okay.
Has it made improvements? Because as we go through these things, I think that we'll find a lot of these things will improve the
They'll work
area.
themselves out.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Henson. Do you have a couple items you want to talk about? I'm sorry, okay.
Not on Armstrong
Mr.
Mill,
Beard.
but I've got a question anyway while I have you up here.
Okay.
The relatively recent East Reynolds Road, Lansdowne Drive signalization, do you go back and tweak the timing of that over time as you see traffic patterns? And are there different timings of the lights depending upon what time of day?
Typically, there are different times of the day patterns. In an intersection like Reynolds Road and Lansdowne, it's kind of isolated from other things.
Right.
It does operate a little differently overnight than it does throughout the typical peak hours. But when it's isolated and not coordinated with others, then it doesn't operate like it would if it was on Nicholsville Road, so to speak. But we can certainly tweak if there's certain periods of the day that you see things that maybe we don't see. I don't travel it maybe as often as you do, and certainly we can go back out there and look at certain things.
Well, you know, during Christmas time, for instance, a lot of people use that route to get to Fayette Mall, either across Reynolds Road or on down to Wilson Downing and across into the mall. And so the peak time there changes a little bit. It's all day in some cases, and heavier on the weekends and things of that sort. And I just wondered if we had capability to program those to be able to handle these variations that we have.
Absolutely. I mean, we can talk to each and every intersection from downtown or a remote location. So we can certainly tweak them either from the site or from a remote location. So we can certainly go out there and work with the police as well as on site. And we'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
We can turn our attention to the update on the Wayville Museum, if that's what you'd like to do.
Please, yeah, next, thank you.
As far as the actual intersection itself, it's my understanding that the state evaluated that intersection and they weren't prepared to move forward with any type of a signal recommendation at this time. We do have a project that is in the works to help out in the congestion levels with that entire corridor. They are looking to begin construction this fall to help with an additional lane through inbound traffic in the morning. It's kind of a reversible lane type project with Manowar and Nicholsville Road, and they will begin construction in October timeframe to help out at the Manowar intersection out in Nicholsville Road. What they're going to do is there are currently 2 left turn lanes if you're on Nicholsville Road in either direction to get onto Manowar Boulevard. In the morning hours, you're going to only have a single left turn lane, and the other left turn lane is going to be used as a through lane to come inbound on Nicholsville Road in the morning hours. I know that seems a bit confusing, but there's a very well-developed plan that's going to be put in place with reversible lanes overhead, signage, and signal heads that will be put into place, as well as markings on the ground and things of that nature, and that project will begin in the fall. And what that will inevitably do is provide a through lane, 3 lanes instead of 2 lanes currently in place from about Toronto, all the way through to where there currently is a pickup lane about the Walmart or so entrance on Nicholsville Road. So the queues that we have developed right now that stack back about South Point Drive every single morning will basically be diminished, and you won't even see them once this project is completed. So we're very excited about that project.
What's the time frame, and are we going to be running into Christmas traffic at that time?
This actually will not have much of an impact at all as far as the traffic actually on the roadway itself. So we're hopefully going to get this project completed and out of the way before any type of Christmas shopping or anything. Most all the construction is going to be outside the limits of the roadway itself. They're going to be on the outskirts of the right-of-way.
About how long do you think it'll take to complete the project once started?
Again, they're going to hopefully begin construction in October, and I think the project is going to take about a 60-day window, but I'm not positive about that. I think it's going to take about 60 to 90 days, depending on weather.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this issue? We'll talk to Mr. McCord and see what he wants to do and about keeping this in the committee. Talk to Mr. Myers about the Armstrong Mill. We'll go ahead and remove that one since we're moving forward on that. Ms. Henson, actually, there's Mr. McCord right now. So if you would just give him just a quick update. He probably knows about it. We'll see what he'd like to do with the 27 Waveland. If you would just kind of refresh him real quick, if you don't mind.
We've been working with the Transportation Cabinet on this particular issue. It's my understanding that they're not ready to proceed any further with the traffic signal on US 27, given the congestion levels as well as the other projects that are ongoing with that corridor. Councilmember McCord, you may or may not be familiar with the congestion management program out there with the reversible lanes. The project's getting ready to get underway in October. Again, they're going to be, I think, beginning construction with the poles and the reversible lane on the Manowar intersection mid-October, I think, is the time frame we're getting ready to get underway. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any, what would you like to do with this issue then?
You know, I think it's something that we can take off the agenda items unless the Department of Transportation, changes their stance on that. But, I recognize that with Brandon Crossing and with some of the other things that are happening there, that you're basically just putting too many things close together there. And I think it's unfortunate, more so for the folks across the road from Wavell Museum Lane, which is the cobblestone area where you really have a tough time kind of getting in and out and so forth. I would say that it would be probably a step that we could offer, Chairman Ellinger, is to send a letter to the Department of Transportation and just saying that as that corridor develops, that we would look for every kind of safety opportunity that we can at that intersection, that as they build and build out, I certainly would ask that we would have as much consideration for safety in that area that we can.
You want to make that in a form of motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we as a government send a letter to the Department of Transportation asking for full consideration as they move forward on the safety of that intersection at Wavell Museum Lane and US 27.
We have a motion second. Who do you want that to come from? You want it from the committee or from the traffic engineering or?
That's a good question, Councilman Ellinger. I think from the committee would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, we'll do that. And then, for this issue, do you want to make a motion to remove it then?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second discussion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, we'll remove that. And Ms. Henson had a question on Cambridge Drive, I think, Mr. Frazier, the one that was on October 17th, 06, the restrict parking on Cambridge Drive from Oxford Circle to Village Drive.
Yes, sir. I checked the file on this issue and went through the documentation and found that it was dealing with trying to restrict parking on one side. One of the correspondents that I found in the file from Marion said that Councilmember Maloney was going to bring it before council and go ahead and have that done. I believe that was dated like October of 06. And then beyond that, we've had standard, what was also in the file was just standard maintenance requests for signage and some touching up a yellow curb out there. But that's all the information I found in the file on this subject, ma'am.
Currently, the area that I'm familiar with, there is parking still allowed there. And I work very closely with the Clear Unit, Officer Gayhafer, who's assigned to that area, definitely, says that it's a pretty unsafe area. There was a child recently hit there, very, very narrow street. And a lot of times they park on the curb to prevent their cars from being sideswiped. And I know that, I don't know if we could compromise, put some bike lanes in there and take out the parking, but I would like to see that go forward if we could get some no parking. It's all apartments. They have parking lots in the backs of their building.
What was the, ma'am, what was the officer's name again? It was
Shannon Gayhafer.
Gayhafer.
And it's in the 2000 block, or 1900, and it runs over into the 2000 block of Cambridge.
I will contact her.
But I know if you've got a city bus and a school bus, it's pretty much impossible for them to pass on that street.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that. I also had some other...
Okay, well, we're just going to go down through them systematically from the top to the bottom. Oh, you have something for Mr. Frazier still?
Well, the red light issue.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and deal with that one, sure, while they're here, let's go ahead and address all the issues that affect them.
I just wasn't sure of the history on this. I don't know if maybe that's something you could check on.
The
and
red
bring it
light
back,
issues?
Or
We will check the files and find out. I'll probably have to get with Paul and find out what the source of that is.
I think it had to do with placing the cameras or something on the, to catch red light runners. I still think it's a problem throughout the city.
Yes, ma'am.
But, Paul, did you know any more history on the red light? Okay. But I appreciate if you could...
I think Ms. Gorton has some input, and also Mr. Beard. Ms. Gorton?
I actually have about 10 years of history on that, and The first thing is that we cannot put red light cameras in Fayette County without state legislation. And so several years ago, state legislation change. Several years ago, we had, I believe, Senator Tom Buford and one other legislator who carried legislation to try to make that change, and it did not go through the legislature. And so one of the things we've done in lieu of this is when a few years ago, council members allocated $50,000 to go to a specific red light running campaign where the police set up at certain intersections to specifically target red light runners. So we made this effort a few years ago to try to get this, the camera issue moving forward, and we're not successful.
Is this an issue we want to keep in committee?
I would make a motion to remove it unless someone else.
I have a motion.
Well,
Do we have a second?
I had another comment first before.
Okay, let's get a motion. Well, since we have a motion second, now discussion. Mr. Beard?
Well, it involves the discussion I had with the chief concerning the camera situation and the fact that we're hearing all around the country that they are being installed. The problem may be, and it may lead back to Frankfurt, is that they can identify the automobile, but they can't identify the driver, which puts us at, there's a whole other level of question there, and that is the question about the enforcement of window tinting. And there are laws on the books about window tinting that everybody seems to ignore. And I don't know whether that's our purview of something that we can look into or not. There are companies out there that do it, and there is a certain degree of tinting that you can do, and beyond that, and I'm sure the police department would love to have some kind of control on window tinting also, because it is somewhat dangerous for them to approach an automobile on a traffic stop, not knowing whether it's loaded with my Uzis again that I mentioned the other day, or just exactly what they're dealing with as far as the occupants of the vehicle. And again, as a neophyte, I'm not sure that belongs in this committee or not, the question of the enforcement on window tinting, but
Well, I
if
think
it
if you want
does,
to bring that into, we could, but I think do that in the work session, bring that in your council report if you want to bring it up, and
That'd
we
be
can
fine.
do it then. But I think there are actually, like you said, there are issues on the books right now that deal with window tinting, just maybe if it's being enforced or not
it's
presently.
not, well, I'm pretty sure it's not being enforced.
Right. Any other discussion on this about removing? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, we'll take that off. I think Mr. McCord had an issue that he wanted to address with you.
Just before you go, I wanted to compliment you on what I think is a real success, not in my district, but what you all have done at Lansdowne at the Signature Club, with very creative use of paint that didn't cost a lot of money. And I think that it's one of those things. I saw something the other night about cities using paint jobs to kind of slow people down because it looks like there's a speed hump or those types of things. I think that I would like to see anything from your all's department that is out there, best practices or benchmarks that we can work off of in creating some of these solves. I think the biggest problem that I hear in my district constantly is, can you slow these people down? They're cutting through the neighborhood and so forth. But I think that's a great example of something that didn't cost the government a whole lot of money. It didn't change hardly anything, but just the use of some paint and some signage has really done a very good thing for our city. So I want to just publicly compliment you, because I know that doesn't happen very often that you get a good job thrown at you. But that was a great example, and I would just appreciate anything that you all can give us as a council as to what are some options that we can have to help traffic calm other than just stop signs and speed humps out there.
Yes,
And
sir.
so I appreciate it, Brad. Thank you very
We
much.
thank you for that. That was a pretty good project, a lot of good input from council members and from the neighborhood to make all that come together.
Thank you all, and I think...
One afterward,
Mr.
if I
Beard?
might, on that. I personally was congratulated, like I had a whole lot to do with it, but other than sit in the same meetings that you all did and Councilmember Gorton did. But the Neighborhood Association is very, very pleased with what has happened out there on Lansdowne Drive especially. And, you know, it's something we need to watch, especially now that it's summertime and the Signature Club activity is heightened. But
Yes, sir.
at the same time, it is probably 50 to 75% better than it was.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for all your help here. And
Thank you,
we
Council.
discussed before the council meeting or for the service committee about the issues that's going on in Philadelphia right now with what I think Mr. McCord talked about, and I think you're all looking at that right now.
Yes, we saw the same article, and our curiosity had gone up on it. We had some questions about it, so we're going to check that out and investigate it and see if that can be part of those practices that we
Yeah,
talked
could you
about.
bring that back if you do some research and bring
Absolutely.
back the committee? You know, I might make a formal
Sure.
motion in the council meeting, but I think it'd be nice if you all could do some research and see. I know it at least initially it might have some help, but I think once people are locals and they learn that
Familiar.
it's not a true speed hump, then they might end up speeding right through it.
Yes,
But
sir.
hopefully it will have some benefits. But if you could do some research and get back with us, we'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Thank you all for your help.
Thank you, Council.
Now, at this point, I'd like to just go down through each item and see where we are and kind of give everybody an update. I think we have a couple, though, before we do that. Ms. Gorton, if you would, with the fire hydrants, if you'd like to make a motion.
Just to formalize that, I move that the presentation from fire on private fire hydrants be moved forward to the full council in the form of a 10-minute presentation before the council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. I will report out next Tuesday about what they did, but then Paul will contact fire and have them come back, because I think it'd be nice to have the full presentation. I think it was very beneficial. And with that, we'll go ahead and remove that then. Could you make a motion to remove that then?
I move that we remove that from committee.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that passed. Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Seeing as they're doing some work at both ends of the Crosby-Armstrong Mill intersection, I move to remove the multi-way stop at Armstrong Mill and Crosby Road from the committee. So moved.
We have a motion, second discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that passes. Now, let's work our way down here, and we'll try to update on the, and we'll go from the most recent to the farthest one on the committee. So the one, we'll start with employee automobile usage and reimbursement. Dr. Blues put in. That is presently in the general services, and they're reviewing that one. The next one, Mr. Camp put in the refuge collection ordinance, section 16. The environmental quality is reviewing that presently. The one Mr. Beer put in with Zandale ditch. At this point, what would you like to do with that one?
I'd like to hold it for a while. There is some activity, and I did some NDF
Okay,
fund.
we'll keep that in there.
To do some landscaping around there and further cleaning up. I think we probably could stand to do some work with the guardrails that are there. 'Cause
Okay, we'll keep that one in. The next one we have dealt with. They're going to come back with us on for Dr. Stevens, the Christ the King, the speed limit reduction. The next one was put in by Mr. Maloney, the block party process. Ms. Henson? I have a different list here.
I apologize. A couple months ago, Vicious Dogs was taken out after some discussion at committee, either in the June or May meeting. I'm sorry.
So the next issue I had was the block party process. Ms. Henson?
I don't remember the history of this. I just, I know that it came about from groups blocking off an entire street in order to have a party. If no one has any objections, I'll just make a motion to remove it.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? That passes. On the alcohol, we're working to get a task force formed. The next one, Dr. Stevens, and I think this is the par 3 golf course. I think also, Mr. Beard, you might have some follow-up with this, I believe.
Dr. Stevens put this in, I guess, in the fall of '07, and, you know, since that time, we were able to ask the school board to open up and not take possession of Meadowbrook Golf Course, and we are playing out there right now, and continue to play, and it's getting actually a lot more play than it's ever gotten before. I guess the publicity maybe
always helps.
It sure does. What the future holds, I don't know.
We'll keep it in, and we'll talk to Dr. Stevens, see
Sure.
what he'd like to do with it. The next item, the news rack ordinance, Mr. DeCamp will report in August, at our August meeting, about that issue. The dispatching intercity buses from terminals, Mr. Maloney and Ms. Henson, do you have some discussion?
I would like to get some more information on this. There is still a problem with a bus that, buses that come into a shopping center or what, you know, they're transporting people. It's a private bus line. But I'm not sure anything can be done about it, but I would
But it's
like
not
to.
Lextran, so we wouldn't contact Lextran then?
It's not Lextran, it's not Bluegrass Tours, it's not Greyhound, although it's similar to Greyhound, probably.
We'll leave it in, see if we can do some more research and see if Mr. Schoniger can find some information for us.
Okay.
The next one, Mr. Stinnett, the door-to-door peddlers. I'm not sure, Mr. Schoniger, do you know where we stand on that? We can talk to Mr. Stinnett on that one. The next one we have dealt with, and so the next one, and then the one on November 14th, Mr. Maloney, imposing fee for signage for right-of-way. I think Mr. Myers has some issue to address with this.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and leave that in the committee, and there's a few of us that are looking at possibly taking a look at the sign ordinance over the break and coming back with something, so I'd like that to stay in committee.
Will do. We'll keep that one in committee. The Cambridge we've dealt with. The next one was the towing on private property, Ms. Henson, with Mr. Maloney.
Paul and I discussed this one the other day, and I think he was going, were you going to check into that one some more? That was a note that I wrote, and I'm not even sure about the history of it.
As I understand, Councilmember Maloney was concerned that our policy was not to tow off of private property, and that generally is the case, that we will not tow off of private property. He wanted to look at that, but that's the extent of what I've done so far. But, so it hasn't been resolved, so I would recommend you keep that in committee unless you object.
Okay, we'll just keep it. Thank you.
Ms. Gorton, I think, had a question.
Just wondered, what's the question on private property?
what's the issue
towing?
we're dealing
What's
with
the
here?
issue that we're trying to,
As I understand, or as I recall, Councilmember Maloney was concerned that we did not tow when there was when a vehicle was on private property, and he would like that, at least a discussion of whether we should tow on private property. But as you're well aware, he's no longer here, so.
Dr. Blues?
But private companies do tow from private property
Not at the Urban County Government's request, but at other private parties' requests generally, I think.
right,
That's
by a property owner.
Yes, sir, yeah.
So I don't know what the issue is.
I agree. Ms. Henson?
I will talk to Richard Maloney and see if I can get some insight.
Do you
on
like
it.
to go ahead and remove it, and then if you want to bring it back, you could always bring it back? Why
that
don't we
would
do
be fine. So I make a motion to remove.
We have motion, second discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, we'll remove that one. The red light issue we dealt with, the next one, Mr. Myers with the Ombudsman Association.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to request this be on the docket for the next Services Committee meeting, and we'll have the Citizens Advocate come and give us an update on that.
We'll do that. We've dealt with the private hydrants, the private swimming pools. Ms. Henson with Mr. Maloney.
Councilmember Henson and I met last week about several of these items. The issue came about after there was an accident in an above-ground pool and the lack of regulations that we had, particularly fencing surrounding an above-ground pool. I don't know that, I'm confident it hadn't been resolved, but that was his concern, that while we had pretty strict regulations about an in-ground swimming pool, there were less restrictions on or less enforcement of an above-ground pool, particularly regarding fencing around the pool.
Ms. Henson, do you have any follow-up to that?
No, I would like that checked into because I
Okay,
do
we can
feel like
check
it's
into
a
that.
definite.
We'll keep it in there.
Okay,
And would you like to have your name put to that one then?
you could.
Okay. Ms. Gorton, the curb replacement program?
What this is some citizens from neighborhood brought the idea forward that we should consider having a curb replacement program similar to the sidewalk replacement program. Of course, part of the difficulty is funding, with the match, but we don't have any legislation even right now to create it. So I would say it might be worthy of discussion at a meeting to look at what we do with the sidewalk match grants and see if we might consider something with the curb replacements. As you know, the citizens have to replace their own curbs.
Let's see if we can put that on next time. These are some issues, been in here a long time. I'd like to get these addressed and move forward. So let's see if we can get that one on and contact people who deal with sidewalks, and we can try to move this one forward. The last item I have on my list is the mini motorcycles that Mr. Maloney put in, and we're not sure where it is. Ms. Henson, do you have?
I would just make a motion to remove it.
We have a motion to remove and second. Any discussion? Dr. Blues?
Well, I think I agree with the motion, but I think we do have an issue here. One, an issue of noise, but we're trying to address that comprehensively in the noise ordinance task force. But there's also an issue of safety here. I think we notice a lot more children on mini motorcycles, mopeds, four-wheelers in the public streets, and it's an enforcement issue and a safety issue.
Would you like to take over this one then?
Why did I know this was coming? I would be happy to look into it and get some statistics on it from the Division of Police and look into enforcement issues, regarding that, because I think it is an issue.
Well, one thing we're probably going to see a lot more of, I've just noticed in the last, since gasoline went to $4, I've seen more scooters. They aren't mini motorcycles, but I've seen 8 or 10 scooters in the past couple of 3 weeks, and I maybe don't see 2 scooters a year otherwise, and it might be a good time to be in the scooter business, but...
Mr. Myers has a question. We might want to move this, and maybe you could bring it forward to us again, that we look at just not mini motorcycles, but look at all of them that we're dealing with. So we could remove this and then bring that forward if you want as a new topic.
Okay. If I could just say one more thing on that. I think when Mr. Maloney put that in, he was really speaking to those little crotch rockets, the really tiny ones, rather than the scooters and the mopeds and things. But I think it's good to bring it back as that issue. Secondly, vicious dogs on my list is still on the list, and I would like to...
Well, let's deal with this motion first. Let's go with this motion. We have a motion to remove this, and then if you want to bring that other one forward, I'd bring that forward in the council work session, and we can put it back on here. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes. We'll remove that. Then you can bring that forward, and we can look at all the different issues and safety, I think, being the big one. Mr. Myers, you had an issue with the vicious dog?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back in 2006, I co-chaired a committee or a task force on dogs with Councilmember Schaefer back then, and vicious dogs is an issue that we looked at and found from the law department's recommendation that the state statute really governs that and doesn't allow us much elastic in that issue. So what we had talked about as a committee or a task force was an administrative hearing process, but we'd have to go to the state to get enabling legislation to be able to do that. And so I'd like to put this back into committee and then work with Ned Sheehy, our lobbyist for the state, to see if we can't get some movement in that area.
You want to bring that up now, or you want to wait till the work session to bring that up? Yeah, I
we
think,
can do-
I think work session probably the proper place for that, to put it in the committee.
Okay, well, I guess the reason I was bringing it up now is because on my list, it's actually still in this committee. We did take it off?
Well, I believe that it had been
No.
taken off prior. I think that's what Mr. Shonagard said, because it's not on my list.
Okay, listen. Okay, then I'll just make the motion in work session then.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank
Any
you.
other issues before this committee? The motion to adjourn would be appropriate?
So moved.
A second. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, we are adjourned.